What's cooking, what's poppin'? It's your boy Chennington. Hey guys, what's up? It is in actuality your boy from down under, Daydream Deluxe, filling in for the man Chennington, who's currently going into overdrive with a really big project of his that's been in the making for a few months now. So for some reason he trusts me enough to look after his channel and you guys for a bit, so here we are. For whatever reason you decided to click on this video, one thing's for sure, you've seen the memes, you've heard that one song that goes a little something like this. But you want to look a little further into the rabbit hole of this so-called Vaporwave. Like, where do I start with this huge array of records that just keeps spawning all across Bandcamp? Like, which ones do I specifically go to if I want to know more about the genre? Even if you aren't completely accustomed to the genre, you would have at least seen the Macintosh Plus cover art and maybe the Blank Banshee releases, but we're not going to be talking about either of those today because despite them being classics, I think it would be better to put the focus towards some other albums that not only I just recommend, but Pad even approves. Nespresso. I fucking love it. I also encourage everyone who's watching this video who knows very well about what certain releases would be recommended for newcomers to write their suggestions in the comment section below, because the more the merrier. We just want more people to know more and more about this nostalgic genre, and because to be honest, it's really fucking good. But before we go into any more detail about these recommendations, make sure you hit those like and subscribe buttons for Chennington and for me, most especially for Pat, because the man just hit over 100,000 subscribers and it would be amazing if he could get to 1 million. So make sure you hit those like and subscribe buttons and let him know how much you appreciate this video. But with all of that out of the way, let's talk Vaporwave. Let's get into it.
We're starting off with what may possibly be the best selection for beginners, Tupperwave's Baby I Miss You. The follow-up to 2018's To You Baby With Love, which conceptually serves as its sequel, is decorated to the brim with the most humbling equilibrium of Vaporwave and future funk into one buffet of endearing bangers. Tupperwave recruits some of the most esteemed veterans in the genre such as Dan Mason, Cat System Corp, Electric Dreams, Ducat, Melanator and more to inoculate their own meticulous ideas and expertise to fabricate the perfect cut diamond equivalent of aesthetic music. His ability to incorporate his own fingerprints into the work of those that he collaborates with, and his choice in how the samples and percussion coalesce make this record his finest work to date. Tupperwave can adapt to any idea and proficiently stick to his artistic endeavors without fail in everything he generates through his DAW. The pacing, arrangements, and overall production in Baby I Miss You are all executed flawlessly thanks to its thumping sidechain compression, bright reverb, and catchy selection of melodies and groovy characteristics that harbour the flux and essence of what makes Vaporwave its own mesmerising phenomena. There's no accurate way of defining any of the track listing either, because despite having some parallel structures, they're also imitable and unique in their own way. But something I can say is that Baby I Miss You was probably the closest you can get to showcasing how much Vaporwave has evolved over the years from its early roots to where it's at right now. How it's gone from straightforward sample chopping to including additional melodies and taking quirkier components that would eventually result in multiple subgenres. That, by the way, is in no way trivializing anything else that the rest of the scene have catered in recent times, but if you want a firm understanding of how Vaporwave has developed up to this point, you can never go wrong with Tupperwave's Baby I Miss You. If however you're wanting to expand on the more down-tempo and experimental sides of Vaporwave, none could compare to the multifaceted sonic platter Hiraeth by one of the scene's most beloved figures, Cat System Corp. Given that Vaporwave was still pretty young at the point of this album's release, and that a plethora of artists were still engaging in the more lo-fi side of mixing, Hiraeth was really ahead of its time for being one of the most crisp sounding Vapor records of 2014. Not just from a production standpoint, but also how unpredictable it was with its track listing. It's pretty rare to find an LP where just about every song is significantly different and can complement each other no matter how unevenly organized they are, which by the way is greatly beneficial for anyone getting into Vaporwave. You can use this album to pinpoint the tracks you like the most. Say you enjoyed the quirkiness of A500 Green Death Genesis, Adobe Girlfriend and I Coliseum Dew, you'll probably find producers like Death's Dynamic Shroud or Mesh to your liking. Maybe you prefer the lo-fi and chill approaches of Quartz, Online Office version 4.20 and Twin Palms. For that you could probably end up diving into the essentials of late night lo-fi, or perhaps the utopian ambience of Eating Transit, Marble Fountain Clanton and the Hanging Garden might have you wanting to explore the mesmeric world of dream punk or slushwave. That right there is what makes Hiraeth so perfect for beginners. You get more variety for your experience as a newcomer and get a good gist of how versatile and manipulable Vaporwave can get. Cat System Corp's catalogue in general is very accessible, and you could pick just about any of his work to enthrall you into what this nostalgic genre has to offer, but none are as mind-bogglingly provocative as what Hiraeth is able to deliver when you venture into its 40 plus minutes of enrapturing bliss. As future funk is considered to be the most amicable breed of Vaporwave, you could legitimately recommend just about any release of that bracket to anyone wanting to acquaint themselves with the music. But what other album truly deserves to be mentioned in the first breath than St. Pepsi's critically acclaimed Hit Vibes? By one of the scene's most legendary and definitive names, this LP has remained a classic to the community since its release in 2013. Among the 8 records he drops that same year, Hit Vibes was an immediate favourite and became St. Pepsi's most celebrated achievement to date for shaping the first wave of future funk and redefined Vaporwave with a more upbeat and sanguine approach to its nostalgic identity. When I say Hit Vibes is contagiously groovy, that's in no way an idle comment to make it sound all the more convincing to spin. It is legitimately difficult to jam this banger without spazzing out some wacky dance moves. Whether it be disco contorted jams such as Have Faith, Better and Skylar Spence, or the more chill and down-tempo temperament of I Tried and Together, Hit Vibes is super hospitable and inclusive to everyone and anyone it's put in front of. No matter where you look, St. Pepsi's Hit Vibes will be found in just about everyone's list of recommendations, and for good reason. It's precise and unequivocally crispy to its core. It's not just some consistent looping of hits that you could leave spinning for hours on end in the background. You really get into it physically, and the assemblage of all 13 songs have left more than a few good impressions on both casual and frequent listeners. So don't expect to stay still in the middle of its cycle, my friends. You're going to be indulging in some absolutely sensational finesse and then some. And we're not stopping there with the big guns just yet. Dan Mason is another imperative figure like some of the others I've mentioned in the scene that has always managed to deliver some quality material to his audience. Just about any of his work is enticing enough for newcomers to Vaporwave, but what truly merits the most attention of his discography has to be 2015's Miami Virtual. Picture yourself living in the summer of 1989. You're sitting on the cushion of your wicker armchair on the balcony of your ocean view suite in a 5-star resort, and you're admiring the picturesque gradients of that purple and orange sunset while sipping on a can of that green tea Arizona. That's one of the many ways to articulate the wealth and luxury that emanates from Miami Virtual. Miami Virtual glows with convivially stimulating vibes that channel elements of muzak, smooth jazz, and even a bit of Latin music and Japanese city pop that Dan Mason uses to the best of his ability to embellish the LP with rich, sumptuous ambience. All the hypnagogic intricacies you'll find in Miami Virtual capture the mood of what the late 1980s would have felt like in Miami impeccably. It's not like you have to use much of your imagination to grasp every ounce of elegance in the record's entirety, and neither does the encapsulation of the aesthetic that Dan Mason tries to convey feel contrived in any way, shape or form. You can really feel the sand of Panama City Beach caressing your face when the instrumentals of songs such as Say Goodbye, Partly Cloudy and Loveless Night flow throughout the LP's course. Plus, those saxophone samples that Dan fluently equalizes are what truly stand out amongst everything presented in the serene, audible exhibition of Miami Virtual. I highly encourage everyone to go and check out the rest of Dan Mason's discography as soon as you've given this one a spin. You're in for a real trip and a half with what he does, and you'll see how far he's come from revamping old melodic artifacts to pioneering his own concepts. This next name in particular, who's known by many as the King of Future Funk, has a wealthy back catalogue in the establishment of the genre's visual and audible fingerprint. Enter Macross 8299 and his 2014 magnum opus, A Million Miles Away, one of the many forerunners to Vaporwave's house-inspired counterpart that has since become one of the most sought-after physicals in the scene. Like some of the others in this list, Macross 8299 is by no means a one-trick pony that limits his work exclusively to one field of music. In A Million Miles Away, he amalgamates a clean mix of future funk with subtle touches of hip-hop, down-tempo and traditional Vaporwave, all the while inoculating the spirit of disco, house, city pop and funk, resulting in 10 sublime tracks that showcase Macross's versatility as a producer. Not too much sidechaining, not too much reverb, just the perfect amount to repackage the original sample's jovial rhythms with a modernistic touch that complement the last 4 decades of dance music. While the renowned artsy music channel was one of the earliest known sources to apply the imagery of anime into future funk, Macross 8299 was also one of the first artists that cooperated in unifying the aesthetic with the sound. I mean, for sure, you'll find that's the case with at least half of the entire scene, but how often often can you perceive 80s and 90s Japanese animation in your head just by listening to it rather than looking at the product? All of that aside, A Million Miles Away has remained an essential cog in the wheel for future funk since it's made its way onto the web, and continues to be celebrated by so many in the worldwide fraternity of Vaporwave. The musical world of Death's dynamic Shroud is one enormous rabbit hole in itself, and if you aren't careful with which album to pick, it might just catch you off guard and ultimately disrupt you. So instead of opting the likes of exceedingly yet chaotically structured masterpieces such as I'll Try Living Like This or Heavy Black Hearts, I feel that your best choice to ease into the cosmos of Death's dynamic Shroud is with Feelings of New World. Produced by 1/3 of the DDS brand, James Webster welcomes you with open arms into a somewhat luxurious side to their discography, all the while giving you a glimpse at their mysteriously idiosyncratic nature. Like the rest of the DDS catalogue, the aquatic theme's Feelings of New World radiates an ethereal, otherworldly soundscape while maintaining the quirky aura that the trio are known for. Webster, who's recognised for his proclivities in sampling video game music, will occasionally amalgamate these stems with his own saturnine instrumentals, projecting cavernous reverb to put the listener into a serene, evocative disposition. Webster makes it seem like he grabs every water level from every video game cartridge made in the 90s, extracted every molecule of its aesthetics and sounds, and rendered everything into its own physical plane. And that right there's not even scratching the surface with what Death's dynamic Shroud are really capable of, because they are an ingenious force to be reckoned with. They may not be the most accessible Vaporwave artists for some, but I felt really compelled to put Death's dynamic Shroud in this list because they played such a fundamental part in making the genre more experimentally flexible. Feelings of New World may be more ambient as opposed to their more obscure and glitchier elements of which they're known for, but it's probably the safest route to take when getting to know them. But when you do eventually warm up to them, you'll find yourself wanting to fall further and further into that DDS rabbit hole. Now, it can't be a proper list without at least one Vapor Trap record. I could have picked something along the lines of Blank Banshee Zero, Vapora's Mana Pool, or N5X's Remember Last Summer, which all would have been very appropriate and more relevant choices, but I wanted to pick something a little lesser known, yet very well respected within the confines of the scene. That being said, I give you Crystal BEPIS by Corrupted Data Corp, aka Dead Disk Drive. In all of its carbonated beverage themes track listing from front to back, Corrupted Data Corp's bourgeois equivalent production, minimal yet crisp execution of instrumentals and atmospheric trap beats sparkle like the bubbles in a bottle of San Pellegrino. For an almost half-hour long LP, you're in for an exquisitely delectable treat that's gonna satiate those audible taste buds of yours in no time. The record's soft drink-inspired concept is exactly how one would expect just by looking at its cover. Chill, cool, bubbly and fresh as hell. It's like each song has its own distinct flavour, and that the warm, cozy synths and syncopated drum rhythms flowing throughout the album make you imagine the rich flavours and textures of these drinks. It almost makes you feel as if you've stepped into the factory of a soft drink manufacturer, only to find that instead of industrial machinery, the building harbours a tropical indoor garden with a giant fluorescent waterfall where all of its contents are fermented to create these refreshments. Vapor Trap's very malleable to bend and contort in the spectrum of Vaporwave, and a lot of producers over the years have been able to tamper with a plethora of exciting ideas in its aesthetic and harmonious modulation to spawn something original, whether conceptually or sonically. Crystal BEPIS by Corrupted Data Corp is a cocktail of both, and only a mere fraction of how far this particular subgenre can go, and its minimalist compositional structure serves as a fantastic example of how so much can be made with so little, even with the absence of samples. And now for my last recommendation, we're gonna end it with a classic. The split LP, Late Night Delight, by two of Vaporwave's most illustrious icons, Luxury Elite and Saint Pepsi, who unite to take you back to the early 90s through one of the most essential releases of the late night lo-fi category. 2013 was a mammoth of a year not just for Saint Pepsi and Luxury Elite for the large number of records they dropped that year, but for the majority of Vaporwave in general. There's so much one could cover for that year alone, but if it were to be summarized into a single album, it would be the definitive opera maestra, Late Night Delight. What makes Late Night Delight so great isn't solely based on the nostalgic atmosphere each of these tracks emits, how groovy these downtempo bangers are and how fantastic their simplistic approaches were, but how Lux and Peps were both able to follow the same oral patterns and each other's leads in their own segments of the album while staying true to their own signature traits. A lot of late night lo-fi you'll find on Bandcamp emanate the most wistful sensation of the early 90s, that feeling of surfing through the channels on your square-shaped Panasonic TV TV set at 2 in the morning while laying back in your lazy boy recliner. But in this one, however, you've been given a large, mouth-watering Big Mac meal from your local McDonald's to go with the experience. Each track spans at least a minute to 2 minutes long and features an array of samples that draw the Japanese and American cultures together in being refurbished and remodeled, all the while preserving the nuanced longing of being back in the days of when Nintendo and Sega were still competing against one another. No matter who's behind the wheel on this journey, Luxury and Lead and St. Pepsi are going to take you on one hell of a relaxing yet funky and enchanting ride down memory lane to a time you might not have been around for.
So there you have it, my friends. A's aesthetic records to help you get into the cosmos of Vaporwave. If you guys really enjoyed this video, please, like I said, leave a like and subscribe on Pag Chennington's channel. I seriously want to give the man a really big thank you for putting me on his channel, specifically with this video, because I was actually planning on doing this on my own channel, but the fact that he's actually given me this opportunity to promote it on his, bro, seriously, thank you so fucking much. Not to mention, I've been watching Pag Chennington for the last 2.5 years, and I've always just admired his content. He's one of the reasons why I actually make videos in the first place. So big shout outs to him. So if you did in fact enjoy this video, please go ahead and visit my channel. I've got all sorts of different dives into certain albums. I've got albums about UFO cults. I've got albums that were cursed. I've also got historical details about how future funk began. All sorts of different stuff. Nonetheless, I'm going off on a tangent. I'm gonna leave it at that. But until next time, much love, your boys, Pag Chennington and Daydream Deluxe. See you in the next one, guys.